Tonight on the Daily Wrap, we head out to Iowa and points beyond with the latest campaign news. We sit down with award-winning journalist Sean Naylor to talk about his new book that has the Defense Department up in arms. Plus, is the Black Lives Movement responsible for an increase in police shootings? We'll have all that and more. This is the Daily Wrap, live from New York City. And welcome to the show, everybody. I'm Rick Unger. My co-host, Joe Concha, has the day off today. But joining us tonight is the chief strategist of Bellpoint. David Nelson's in the house.
Thanks for having me.
Nice to have you back. To his right, we have conservative radio host and blogger Stacey Washington is here. Nice to see you, Stacey.
Nice to see you.
And, of course, the editor of thewisdomdaily.com, Brad Hirschfeld, once again joins the panel. If everybody's ready, let's get right to the Daily Download.
Is there anyone on stage, and can I see hands, who is unwilling tonight to pledge your support to the eventual nominee of the Republican Party and pledge to not run an independent campaign against that person? Again, we're looking for you to raise your hand now. Raise your hand now if you won't make that pledge tonight. Mr. Trump.
I cannot say I have to respect the person that if it's not me, the person that wins. If I do win and I'm leading by quite a bit, that's what I want to do. I can totally make that pledge if I'm the nominee.
I mean, This is what's wrong. He buys and sells politicians of all stripes. He's already, hey, look, he's already hedging his bet on the Clintons, okay? So if he doesn't run as a Republican, maybe he supports Clinton or maybe runs as an independent.
Okay.
But I'd say that he's already hedging his bets because he's used to buying politicians.
And Megan, that's a completely ridiculous answer. I want to collect more records from terrorists, but less records from other people. How are you supposed to know, Megan?
Use the Fourth
What are you supposed
Amendment.
to? How are you supposed
Use
to?
the Fourth
No, I'll tell you how you
get a warrant.
Let me tell you something.
Get a judge to sign
when
a warrant.
Senator.
Go ahead, wait, Governor Christie, make your point.
Listen, Senator, when you're sitting in a subcommittee just blowing hot air about this, you can say things like that. When you're responsible for protecting the lives of the American people, then what you need to do is to make sure that you use the system the way it's supposed to work.
I don't trust President Obama with our records. I know you gave him a big hug, and if you want to give him a big hug again, go right ahead.
Go ahead, Governor.
And Senator Paul, the hugs that I remember are the hugs that I gave to the families who lost their people on September 11th. Those are the hugs I remember, and those had nothing to do with politics, unlike what you're doing by cutting speeches on the floor of the Senate, then putting them on the internet within a half an hour to raise money for your campaign, and while still putting our country at risk.
I want to win. I want one of these people here, or the ones at 5 o'clock, to be the next president of the United States. We're not going to win by doing what Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton do each and every day, dividing the country, creating a grievance kind of environment. We're going to win when we unite people with a hopeful, optimistic message.
That was an interesting walk down memory lane. So now, with the election season fully underway, seems like a very good time to stop and catch our breath, especially after seeing that video, and see if we can't take a look from 35,000 feet to determine just where we are now that the 2016 election is just around the corner. On the GOP side of the political ledger, it seems that all is coming down to one name that continues to dominate. It's hysterical.
I am officially running for President of the United States, and we are going to make our country great again. I will be the greatest jobs president that God ever created. I tell you that.
I see Rick Perry the other day, and he's so, he's doing very poorly in the polls. He put glasses on so people will think he's smart. And it just doesn't work. I see him, he's so vicious. He used to be really a nice guy. He used to come to see me for contributions and support. All of a sudden he wants to show he's a tough guy with Trump. Bush said, my tone's not nice. My tone. I said, tone, we need tone. We need enthusiasm. We need tone.
And actually, Hillary Clinton said, I don't like his tone.
We got people having their heads cut off, Christians, in the Middle East. I see your senator. What a stiff. What a stiff. Lindsey Graham.
By the way, he's registered 0 in the polls. 0.
And then I watched this idiot Lindsey Graham on television today.
He couldn't do what you people did. You're all retired as hell and rich, okay? He wouldn't be rich.
He actually probably seems to me not as bright, honestly, as Rick Perry. I think Rick Perry probably is smarter than Lindsey Graham, but what do I know?
Sadly, the American dream is dead.
So, guys, let's face it. It's been all Trump all the time since the 2016 campaign got underway. Now, with signs that Trump may be invincible, or maybe that's just starting to fade in light of Dr. Ben Carson's surge in Iowa, has it been too much Trump too much of the time?
I'm going to take the other side of that argument, Rick. Sure, it's been about Trump up until this point, but in the end it's going to come down to some of the issues. And Ben Carson is coming up pretty fast.
He is.
I think what Trump is really tapped into, and really some of the top-tier candidates in this election cycle, is the anger of Americans. And that spreads across, both sides of the political aisle at this point. Americans are really upset. He's a master at tapping into that, but at some point in time, you got to come up with something a little bit more than I'm going to build a wall.
See, that's just it. Stacey, we keep hearing about the anger of the American public. We get it. You're mad. You're angry. I never understand why they're not a little bit more angry at themselves for electing these boneheads we send to office, but they're angry. Is it enough that you're angry to pick just anybody to be president of the United States?
Absolutely not. I actually think Trump serves an excellent purpose in that he brings the conversation down to a level that Americans are interested in watching. And he's talking about things that heretofore politicians were afraid to touch, like immigration, the wall, all of those things. But at some point, we need to hear what Trump plans to do. We have to have more than just, I'm going to make the Mexicans build me a wall. We need actual policy plans. And he hasn't been able to produce that yet. Meanwhile, as you mentioned, we have Ben Carson stepping up, and then we have Ted Cruz, who's very popular. So I think it's anybody's game, but not anybody's, because Grahamnesty, he's going nowhere.
Grahamnesty. Well, you wouldn't know it, but there are some other candidates seeking the nomination of the Republican Party. The skimpy amount of coverage that they get, it doesn't do them any good, but still, most experts continue to believe that the ultimate nominee of the GOP will not be the real estate tycoon from New York, but rather another name from the current crop of candidates. Guys, looking into your crystal ball, who do you think will ultimately prevail in the race for the Republican nominations?
Look, it's way too early to know. This is part of the business. Those experts are creatures of the system. Here's what we do know. What Ben Carson shares with Donald Trump is they are non-politicians. We've got to tap into that anger. What people who are interested in seeing a Republican take the White House better understands that Donald Trump, for all the fanfare, in poll after poll, including the two most recent by Quinnipiac and by CNN, loses to Hillary Clinton. So at some point, tapping into anger actually will drive people's choices. What might shape that in the future is their decision. Would you rather only be angry, or would you like to be angry and win?
There's another name on that list, and that's Carly Fiorina. She's also an outsider at this point. She's coming up. She's going to make it into the top tier. I'm encouraged by this group of candidates that we have right now. One of the things that Donald Trump talks about, all right, and he hasn't gone after Ben Carson at this point, who I really think is really number 2 with a bullet and rising very fast in the party. What he has talked about is pointed out some of the glaring inefficiencies and deficiencies of some of the candidates like Bush. He's right. He's boring. He's old guard. He doesn't impassion the people.
But is he the best prepared or not, Stacey?
Doesn't matter whether he's the best prepared.
No, he's not. So you got Ben Carson, who I think would make a fantastic Surgeon General. But let's just stick with what we've got right now, which is him tying with Trump. He'd make a good president if we had a different electorate.
Who do you pick? Who's looking at the ball? Who's it going to be?
I think it's Ted Cruz. I think he's the one, because he's allying himself with Donald Trump to receive those voters once Trump fizzles out. And if that happens, if he fizzles out.
That's a big if. Yeah. Like the premise of the ifness of Trump fizzling out is that's not what we expect, but it's good.
Guys, you've heard what we have to say. Now we want to know what you predict. Who is your choice for the 2016 presidential nominee? Go to NewsmaxPolls.com to cast your vote. We want to hear what you have to say. Coming up next, award-winning defense journalist Sean Naylor joins the program. Stay with us. National security continues to be at the top of the minds of Americans as the nation faces grave challenges from all over the world, from terrorists, from nation states alike, and of course, no discussion of our preparedness can take place and be discussed on these challenges without a complete understanding of the role our armed forces play in the effort, and with increasing particularity, our special forces. With that in mind, there's a new book available that will both fascinate and amaze you as it explores the history of America's Joint Special Operations Command, the publication of which raised quite a ruckus with the intelligence community as it reveals secrets and operations never before made public. Our panel will be coming back a little later, but joining me right now is Sean Naylor, an award-winning defense journalist and intelligence and counterterrorism correspondent for Foreign Policy magazine and the author of Relentless Strike, The Secret History of Joint Special Operations Command. Sean, thanks so much for dropping by.
Well, thank you for having me.
Your book is extraordinary, and I was trying to find the starting point to where to do it, so I think the place to begin, when did the Joint Operations come together?
Joint Special Operations Command was created in 1990 in the aftermath of the failed attempt to rescue the US hostages in Tehran, and it was realized then in the Pentagon that the military needed a permanent command that could run missions like that in the future, because the mission that had been undertaken to try to free the hostages in Tehran was a completely ad hoc force
you had
put together.
Each of the armed forces overseeing their particular special forces.
Exactly, at the time. And then when they were brought together for this task force, it was the first time that many of them had worked together and so forth. And that created a lot of friction that shouldn't really have occurred.
So what are the elements that are under, what's the acronym we use for it?
JSOC.
It's JSOC, and that's really how most people refer to it. What are the elements? What are the parts of JSOC? There's the Navy SEALs, there's
Navy SEAL Team 6, which is one of JSOC's special mission units, as
now
they call them.
The remaining parts of Navy SEALs are not part of Oh, interesting.
No.
Okay.
And then you've got the Army's Delta Force. You've got a portion of the 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment, which is an Army elite helicopter unit. You've got the 75th Ranger Regiment, contributes to JSOC task forces. You have a very shadowy intelligence / special operations organization that I refer to in the book as Task Force Orange, which was for a long time its nickname
why are they more shady, let's say, than or shadowy than, say, SEAL Team 6?
They conduct a lot of intelligence operations. For a long time, they did a lot of work for the National Security Agency, the NSA, and they often would work in much smaller numbers or even singleton missions. Now, of course, the other special mission units, Delta Force and SEAL Team 6, have started to do a lot of that sort of work themselves, so there's a certain amount of overlap in terms of roles and missions.
So it's interesting, so people understand, you basically have the special forces, but it sounds like only the cream, if you will, of the special forces, only the best of the Delta Force, only the best of the Rangers. I know there's a lot of other divisions of the Army Rangers make it into this program.
It's not quite like that. It's those units answer to JSOC, but other parts of the special operations community, for instance, Army Special Forces, otherwise known as the Green Berets, they do not fall under JSOC. JSOC specializes in particular in direct action missions.
I see. Okay.
And so if you want the best force in the world to go and train Afghan troops, or the Northern Alliance, for instance, at the beginning of the Afghanistan war, you take the Green Berets, you take Army Special Forces to go do that. And they are not part of JSOC. They are the experts at operating by, with, and through.
I see.
Yeah.
So, you know, one of the things that certainly got my attention, apparently the Special Forces don't always get along with JSOC command. You tell a story in the book about the night of the bin Laden raid. Not everybody was on the same page.
Yeah, that's true. There was, and indeed in the run-up to the bin Laden raid, there was a certain amount of friction between elements in SEAL Team 6 and the JSOC commander, Admiral Bill McRaven, over how to insert the force. Not everybody was keen on using the stealth helicopters, one of which ended up crash landing.
One of them didn't survive.
Yeah. And you know, there were some in SEAL Team 6 who thought that they could do the operation as a free-fall parachute jump, which was a mission they had trained for years, to go and get Osama bin Laden, assuming he was going to be closer to the Afghan border. And the idea would have been that they would have flown along the Afghan side of the border, jumped out of the plane, sailed on the wind and as a sort of high altitude, high opening free fall technique, and then landed wherever bin Laden was. If they had done it in Abbottabad, they would have had to have crossed the border, and it would have been a more dangerous mission. But no, there was some friction as to whether to just use the regular Chinook helicopters, the freefall technique, or the stealth helicopters.
And you also talk about how close we came on 2 previous occasions to launching an effort to take out bin Laden, and that they were called off at literally the last second.
That's right. There were missions planned in 1998 and 1999 to go and get Osama bin Laden.
Sean, that's all we have time for, and I'm really sorry because there's a lot more I want to ask you. I highly recommend to people that you read the book, Relentless Strike. Thanks so much for coming in, Sean. Sean, again, we're going to do this again. Is the Black Lives Matter movement causing an increase in police officer deaths? Our panel is going to return to discuss that and a whole lot more when we come back right here on the Daily Wrap. Stay tuned.
Pigs in a blanket, fry like bacon. 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 Pigs in a blanket, fry like bacon.
Yeah, well, welcome back to the Daily Wrap. Those were Black Lives Matter activists at the Minnesota State Fair protesting against police violence. Now, since the death of Michael Brown, the Black Lives Matter movement has grown and a number of police officers have died. Black Lives Matter organizer Trayan Cruz told MSNBC's Chris Hayes that pigs in a blanket, fry 'em like bacon chant was taken out of context and was really meant as a playful joke.
Do Black Lives Matter activists hate police officers?
No, not at all. And I want to put that chant in context. We had a great demonstration that day. It was very exciting. It was so exciting that I think the police who were along escorting the march or wanted to be a part of the march or part of the demonstration. So on the way back, the officer leading the parade kept talking into his microphone and saying things to the crowd like, stay off the medium, do that. He was laughing and joking with the marchers, so then the marchers kind of started chanting that towards him, and it was more playful than anything.
You buy that, Brad? Was that about being playful?
Not at all. Let's be very clear. One of the principles of the Black Lives Matter movement that they actually deserve some credit for taking seriously is that words matter. But if words matter can impact the way people in the black community are treated, they matter when people in the blue community are treated also. You're not allowed to walk down the street joking about killing cops and say, oh, no, we don't really mean that. In fact, the single most important issue in good policing is trust. And they are guilty of undermining trust every bit as much as the bad actors in the police community are. And that's actually, it's so often the case in these kind of groups. The two sides that are most opposed to each other are most like each other.
Stacey, what do you think?
It's ridiculous. I mean, if they expect us to believe that that was done in jest, sorry, I'm not buying it. When you've been, as I have in Ferguson, and seen the protesters with their Black Lives Matter t-shirts on, standing in the personal space of police officers telling them, I know your daughters, I know where your wife, we know where you live, we're going to rape your wife, we're going to rape your kids. It becomes a little problematic when you hear that chant.
Yeah, I can see your point. David, do you think, though, that everybody who's involved in this movement is really focusing on the police, or is there more to this message than just we're ticked off at police officers?
You know, I think this, I doubt this organization started quite like this, but somewhere along the line they went down a dark path, and we end up with a video like this, and I'll take an issue with Mr. Cruz, who's just on this, on the TV before. I don't think it was very funny, and it was kind of tragic. But a bigger issue is starting to develop, Rick, is that it's become politically incorrect to say that all lives matter. And I find that astounding that after that incident that we just saw, that none of the mainstream media really covered that. Very few did.
Actually,
I'm talking about NBC, CBS,
I'm going to disagree
and
with
ABC.
that because I've heard that discussion a great deal. In fact, I asked the question, why isn't it okay to just say all lives matter? And that certainly includes black lives and everybody else. And actually, somebody gave me a perspective on it. They said, you know, it's like going to a cancer benefit and asking the question, well, why aren't you worried about everybody with a serious illness? Well, of course we're worried for everybody with a serious illness, but it's a cancer
Rick,
benefit.
Let me fight back a little bit. When you're trying to bring people together, all right, do you really want to put a wedge between race relations in this country? I think a movement like this is exactly what that does.
So to your point, actually, the Black Lives Matter too is a way to understand your insight. I think it's right. But the movement is actually not about bringing people together, and that's where you're right, David.
Well,
and here's what we know. We actually have a graphic of this, and this was the response from the official website, the official Facebook page of the Black Lives Matter movement posted yesterday after the DNC, the Democratic National Committee, reached out to them and wanted to help. And look what it says. The Democratic Party, like the Republican and all political parties, have historically attempted to control or contain black people's efforts to liberate ourselves. True change requires real struggle, and that struggle will be in the streets and led by the people, not a political party. It is the same angry, separatist, rejectionist rhetoric that comes from every liberation movement that tragically ends up doing to others exactly what they claim they didn't want done to them.
Do they have a point? Is political parties the way to go here?
Look, it's not about political parties. It's about, if you say you have a movement, what's the message? Look, in St. Louis, just a couple of weeks ago, we had a 93-year-old Tuskegee veteran robbed twice by two sets of black men in Ferguson. We had a 9-year-old girl shot to death on her bed as she did homework at home in her house, and her mother was wounded in the leg. Not a peep from Black Lives Matter. So if we accept the premise that was explained to you that it's like a cancer, you know, you're talking about a specific illness, why didn't those Black Lives Matter? Why weren't there protests for that? They only protested the 18-year-old guy who was a criminal who was shot in the serving of an arrest warrant. They protested for him. They burned down buildings for him. But what are we talking about here? So my question is, which Black Lives Matter, and when are they going to get with the program? No one's going to support what they're doing right now.
She's got a point, doesn't she?
She's got a point, but in the end, this has got to put people's lives in risk.
Well, you know, it'll be interesting to see how it develops. It's not going away. What do you think about the Black Lives Matter movement? Let us know at newsmaxtv.com/comments. This is something that's going to be with us, I suspect, for a very long time. We're going to have to get somebody in from that organization to give us that side. Stay with us. More coming up next.
And its surrogates have taken to point out, they say this is a media-driven story, that this is a partisan story from Republicans Congress who want to do damage to her, prevent her from becoming president. Do you see evidence now, though, inside the campaign that they view this as a real problem?
No, they do now, and I think what they view is they know they have a perception problem among other Democrats, Democratic elites. They know members of Congress want to help them. They don't know how to. They feel as if the campaign isn't giving them the explanations that they need. And so there has definitely been some internal friction, some of it led by former President Clinton, who is just annoyed that there aren't more surrogates out there defending Hillary Clinton on this. So I think you're going to see a little bit of an attempt by the campaign to appease nervous Democrats.
That, of course, was Meet the Press host Chuck Todd on the Today Show, talking about former President Bill Clinton's frustration with his fellow Democrats failing to support his wife, Hillary Clinton, as she navigates through Emailgate. Now, while we can understand President Clinton's frustration, can he really blame the party for not coming to Hillary's side when she has done such a poor job handling the issue herself? As we previously pointed out, 61% of Americans say that Hillary Clinton is not honest and not trustworthy. Not to mention that the most popular word that comes to mind when her name is mentioned is the word liar. How do you think the public will respond to Bill Clinton's griping about fellow Democrats? Will they see him as doing the noble thing and standing up for his wife, or will they just view it as just more politics, David. What are they going to say?
Bill's out of line here. First of all, it's politics, and there are no friends in politics, and she's suffering right now.
Wait, it's his wife. Can't we cut him a break and say
Okay,
he's
so he
looking
can go
out
out and
for
defend
his
his
wife?
wife as he wants, but he doesn't. He's not necessarily going to get the help from senators and congressmen who also have to run for elections in the next election cycle. Look, her favorables versus her unfavorables. She's upside down right now. Nobody wants to stand on the stage with her. She's going to have to dig this out herself. She's got to dig within her and somehow bring this back online.
Stacey, you gonna go with he's just looking out for his wife,
No.
or you think he's playing politics?
Look, here's the deal. If this were Bill Clinton and there was an email scandal, every Democrat would step forward for him because they love him, they like him,
That
he's
is a
their guy.
fascinating point.
But not for Hillary because they don't like her.
point.
You know when Democrats like Hillary? When they can't see her or hear her. I've been saying this all along. The more often she's in the press, the more she talks, the more her face is out there, the more they hear her voice.
Brad, you're nodding in agreement.
It's
You
not-
think
I mean,
that's
Stacey,
true.
you're dead on. That's the point. To paraphrase Bill Clinton from years back, I feel his pain. But it turns out no one really cares because it is about Hillary. There's only two options here, and they both lead to her having to take responsibility. It's at least as much her fault. Either it's not a story, in which case she has to be a whole lot more likable for anyone to care, or it is a story, and she has to get out ahead of it and stop complaining. Either way, as David said, this is her pit to dig herself out
Poor
of.
Hillary. Can't even cut her a break on her husband. But most observers on both sides of the aisle believe that the email story has done considerable damage to the Clinton campaign. But at the end of the day, is this a tempest in a teapot with Hillary having already sewn up the Democratic nomination, Stacey?
No.
Hasn't she already won this?
It's hers to lose. I'll tell you. There hasn't been this much inevitability in the air since I don't know when. I'm maybe too young to say that.
You feel it's hers to lose, really,
I feel
at
it's
this
hers
point.
to lose, but with Biden now meeting with Elizabeth Warren, and it's a public meeting. Let's be clear. He could have met with her and we would have never known about it. They let it be known that they had a meeting. Also, that Biden has had a draft Joe Biden campaign that's been emailing me, of all people, for over a year.
But Brad,
he's going to step out.
Brad,
you know?
we already know, we found out from the Clinton campaign earlier this week that Hillary has already sewn up 20% of the superdelegates.
Yes, and she has, and it's 20%. There's another 80%. Joe Biden is on the stump, even if it's unofficial. He's inviting donors to his home at the Naval Observatory. This is real. Look, I don't know if she gets indicted and therefore she has to drop out. I don't know if she becomes so unpopular that he becomes inevitable and necessary. What I know is when it comes to Hillary Clinton, her track record in electoral politics, never underestimate this woman's ability to snatch defeat from the
Well,
jaws
you guys
of
are,
victory.
you're putting the crown on her head kind of early.
Are we, though? Well, they certainly aren't, and most people aren't. Most people are sitting there waiting for Hillary to fall. But the fact of the matter is, she still leads substantially in Iowa. She still leads in New Hampshire. She still leads in South Carolina. Doesn't that matter?
Even with the fact that Bernie Sanders is a devout socialist, as you put it on the show several times, he's coming.
I never said devout.
But you did use the word socialist.
I have used the word socialist.
He uses the word
He
socialist.
is tapping into the emotions of the Democratic Party far more than her. And waiting in the wings,
But
and
she's
I'm going to go
winning
way
the
off the wall here. Waiting in the
primaries.
wings is Elizabeth Warren,
No.
waiting
No,
for a
close.
stumble.
No, she's not.
She's not. But Joe Biden
No.
is,
Yes.
and that's a real possibility. And I get it. We are early, though, and you're right about one thing. No one should assume anything. By the way, if you're in favor of a Republican winning, the best thing that can happen is Hillary Clinton getting the nomination.
Lightning round, real quick. Does Bill Clinton help or hurt his wife's candidacy?
Oh, he helps.
He always helps.
Definitely, always helps.
Oh, look at that. Everybody thinks Bill Clinton is a boon, even when some nasty stories come out. We'll get into that later. What do you think about former President Bill Clinton's frustration with the Democratic Party? Let us know by going to newsmaxtv.com/comments. Let us know what you have to say there. Coming up next, we're going to read some of your viewer comments. Don't go anywhere. And welcome back to the Daily Wrap. Time to read some of your viewer comments. First up, we have a comment that the Pope is saying that the Catholic Church will forgive abortion. Camille says the Holy Father only broadened the priests available to provide forgiveness for the sin of abortion. In some places, only the bishop can do this. The sin of abortion has always been forgivable if the person seeking absolution sincerely seeks to be absolved and, of course, does whatever penance is given and desire never to commit the sin again. You know, I'm no expert on this, but that's pretty much how it was explained to me.
I had to come up to speed on it because I posted an article from Yahoo that was lambasting the Pope on it on my Facebook page, and the Catholics came out in full to educate.
This commenter nailed it perfectly, and in
she's
fact
got it
what's
right.
really interesting about the Pope is that he widened the tent in both directions, because not only did he allow all priests to grant absolution and forgiveness for abortion, he now is including those who were part of and ordainees of the Society of Pius X,
Why are we
which is an
surprised by this?
ultra-conservative organization.
Isn't that what confession was all about? I mean,
Well, that's
I
the
grew up
point.
as an altar boy.
I'm only surprised because I wasn't raised Catholic, and I never realized that some sins could be forgiven by somebody,
that's the key.
but not by everybody.
As long as you truly are
right.
Sin can be forgiven, and actually there's nothing surprising. The Pope is being the Pope at his best in the sense that he is reminding the world there is no such thing as a sin when proper contrition is admitted that can't be forgiven. That's the way it works.
I just think it's great because it's for women. It gives women the opportunity to, because they're feeling guilty with all the Planned Parenthood videos.
Yeah. Well, we'll read the next comment if we can move along to it. We also have some comments about the Kentucky County Clerk refusing to issue marriage licenses to same-sex couples. Carlos says, I think it is outrageous. She should be fired or recalled at once. Nobody is asking her to believe in gay marriage or change her beliefs about it, nor is anyone asking her to agree with anything. Dennis adds to that, the clerk needs to walk away from her job. Her fight is not a fight that Christ would fight. If she really wants it to change, then she needs to share the gospel and change hearts. She will never change minds. Julie adds, Kim Davis is correct. We're one nation under God, not one nation under the Supreme Court. It's time to stand up for God. Well, right there you can see, what, 2-1, you know, against Ms. Davis. Listen, this has been a really strange story, if you ask me. I think that all of us would respect her religious beliefs.
Oh, I can respect her religious beliefs, but she should be fired.
Well, of course
Clearly she should be fired.
Because she took an oath in office, which I actually read last night, and it points out that she has an obligation to uphold the law.
Correct.
It doesn't say that she has an obligation to uphold the law if the law agrees with her personal religious beliefs.
She's gone. I'd be surprised if
she can't. You can't get rid of her. The majority of people in her district support her, so there won't be a recall. She can't be fired from the job. The only thing that can happen here is making an argument that this is such a dereliction of public trust that she is actually doing damage to even her own cause.
Have we not violated a law? I mean, isn't a law enforceable?
She's practicing civil disobedience, and I love how when some people do it, it's fantastic and it's to be lauded, and when she does it,
well, no, she can't be impeached.
No,
that's not available.
It's
no,
not an alternative.
No, there is something. The alternative that exists is that she can be fined for being in contempt of court, or she can be jailed for being in contempt of court.
and that may very well happen. That may very well
we'll find
happen.
out, in fact,
the judge has to
when
have
she
the
goes in
courage
front
to
of the
put her
judge.
in jail. That's the real
It's-
issue.
And it's tough because the plaintiffs, the people seeking some kind of retribution, are not asking that she be put in jail. They don't want to turn her into a martyr. They're asking for a fine.
Does a judge need that mandate?
Well, a judge doesn't need it. He can do whatever he wants. 800-pound gorilla. He can do whatever he wants. So
I would hope he does his job.
All right, here's a comment. What a surprise about Donald Trump. Chuck says, it's quite apparent you have no love for Trump. However, can you honestly say any of the other candidates have the courage to stand up to the foreign leaders and terrorists other than Trump? I would say not. Carson is a nice man, but nice men don't win. I'm presuming he's speaking to me when he says no love for Trump, because as this panel typically goes, there's no shortage of love for Trump. So I'll respond. Yes, there are other people who can stand up to terrorists and people who want to do us harm. You actually think that Donald Trump is the only man in America, or the only man running for president, who can do that? What are you talking about?
Well, I think this one comment makes an interesting point. It says, nice men don't win. He's tapped. That's the emotion that's fueling the Trump campaign. There's a suspicion of human decency. The politician was willing to combine genuine military strength.
Ben Carson right now? Why are they neck and neck?
Because like Trump, he's a non-politician. The bottom line is, when the party can put together someone who is genuinely strong and truly decent and is willing to talk about that, he can take down
So let me
Trump.
get in this last comment because I like it. Finally tonight, we have a comment about about Newsmax from Don and Carol, who say, we recently discovered Newsmax. We like your channel. Less bling, less bias, less telephones ringing, and down to earth. Godspeed, former Fox friends. Now that's what we like to hear. Thanks so much for joining us. I hope you'll stay with all of our programs at Newsmax because we really like doing them for you. Now remember, if you want to weigh in on any of the issues we talk about here on the show, anything at all, be sure to go to newsmaxtv.com/comments. We will play your emails on the air. You've seen that. Make sure you keep sending them. Up next, time for Yay or Nay. This is the Daily Wrap. And welcome back to the Daily Wrap, where it's time for Yay or Nay. First up, while at a Colorado fundraiser, Speaker of the House John Boehner called GOP presidential hopeful Ted Cruz a jackass. According to event attendees, Speaker Boehner said that he likes that Cruz's campaign is keeping him out of Washington and from telling him how to do his job. If, and I'm saying if, Ted Cruz snags the presidency, with even less get done, if Speaker Boehner clearly is not a fan of Mr. Cruz. How do you get it done if the Speaker can't talk to one of the leaders in the Senate? Is it all over if Cruz were to win?
Gosh, I don't even know how to comment on this. It's been such a fiasco between me.
I do.
Go to her.
That was so unprofessional. My gosh. And so what John Boehner does is he runs around and he's crying and he's so emotional and everybody's supposed to think he's so nice, but he's really ineffective and he seems like he likes the Democrats a little too much. And now he's calling Ted Cruz, who is the darling of most of the right, he's calling him a name.
You are a serious Ted Cruz fan, aren't you?
Well, I like
Sure
him.
is.
He's
You can
serious,
tell.
but I love Carly Fiorina. I mean, I'm equal opportunity with the ones
Can you
who have an
really
opportunity.
picture him in the White House, honestly?
Sure.
Do you eat
I
bacon
mean, we
that's
can
cooked on a
picture
gun
Hillary
barrel?
Clinton
Do
in
you
the
eat
White
bacon-
House.
Do you eat bacon cooked on a gun
I
barrel?
don't
I'm
eat
just
my
curious.
food cooked on items that I have the gun barrel, I have the
Have you
AR-15.
cooked?
I have lots of guns
Have you
actually,
cooked bacon
but I
like
don't cook
Ted
my
Cruz?
food on those because I actually don't like grease or anything foreign on my weapons. But that's just me.
Brad, do you cook your bacon on?
I do not cook my bacon or anything else on a weapon.
Brad keeps kosher.
But I will say this. If it happens and it comes down that way, it's amazing how power actually makes people more responsible, at least within their party. I think Boehner behaved like a buffoon. I won't use his word. It doesn't help anyone, even if he's right, and I don't think he is. But the truth is, if Cruz becomes president and Boehner remains in his job, things will keep moving. That's
They'll
what
find
power
a way,
does.
won't they?
Yeah.
All right. One of the two GOP frontrunners, Dr. Ben Carson, spoke about unity at a campaign stop in Arkansas. Then his speech took a weird turn. Boy, it's all over the place. Take a listen to this.
We must also recognize that we, the people, are not each other's enemies. There are those who are always trying to stir up trouble. They are always trying to drive wedges between us. And, you know, they tell you that there's a war on women. There is no war on women. There may be a war on what's inside of women, but there is no war on women in this country.
Whoa.
Wow.
Is trivializing the abortion debate in this country as a tactic to stir up trouble really something you want to do?
This is where, unfortunately, you know, Ben Carson sometimes goes off the rails, and you just saw evidence of that right now.
Is it possible we just started this presidential campaign way too
Way
early,
too early,
and
maybe.
these guys are all losing their mind?
I don't know if they're losing their mind, but I think he's trying to make a distinction in the name of a good cause, which is greater civility. He made it poorly, though I think he spoke to what a lot of people feel about abortion. So I wouldn't trivialize what he did, although I get it, not the way I would make the point. Don't think it's smart.
And we can't
It's
act
not
as
crazy.
if a lot of people didn't understand that. So plenty of people didn't understand what he just said, but there are plenty of people on the right who completely understood
Right.
what
Yeah.
he said, which is that the unborn,
But see,
that's the true war on women.
Yeah, I get that, I
So,
do.
you
But
know.
see, that's the problem. It was the way he said it. I understand what he was trying to say, but he said it in such a strange way.
When he was talking about a
that,
wedge.
as you said, half the people aren't gonna. They're going, what?
Right.
You know.
When he was first talking, and he was talking about a wedge in America, I actually thought he was going to pivot and go to the Black Lives Matter movement, and then he
interesting.
went to the women.
Yeah.
All right, finally tonight, this is the moment many Americans have been waiting for, maybe for their entire lives. McDonald's has announced they will begin serving all-day breakfast in October. Customers at the popular fast food chain have requested all-day breakfast for some time now. Name 3 such customers. Egg McMuffin and hash browns all day, yay or nay?
Yay, I like my breakfast at night.
Yeah, I do too.
Yay, I can name those 3 people, Maya, Miles, and Madison, our kids.
I'll go with Curly, Larry, and Mo. The reason it's a yay is let them have it their way. Oh, wait, that's a competitor. Why not? Breakfast 24 hours a day is a good thing.
I actually wish every restaurant would serve breakfast.
It's an old diner
How many
tradition.
times have you driven up at 10:35 and you can't
No
get what
question.
you want?
And
There
it's
you
my
go.
favorite
It's the way to
meal.
go.
All right, guys, that's it for tonight. I'm Rick Unger. On behalf of the panel, I thank you for joining us tonight. You're going to be sure to stay tuned because the Steve Malzberg Show is coming up next, and maybe tomorrow I'll be able to talk again.